guest for you guys today, Pam Piligian. Am I pronouncing that right?
Piligian. But you're close.
Piligian.
Yes.
Piligian. Pam Piligian is the Chief Marketing Officer and Senior VP at Navy Federal Credit Union, a member-owned, not-for-profit financial institution dedicated exclusively to serving active duty military personnel, veterans, and their families. At Navy Federal, Pam oversees all global marketing and advertising strategy, digital property engagement, corporate social responsibility, and data analytics. Powering the credit union's famous brand ethos, our members are the mission. Before making the leap client side to Navy Federal, Pam spent 30 years building an illustrious career in account leadership at top tier ad agencies, including BBDO, DDB, and Fitzgerald Company. Notably, while at Fitzgerald Co, she actually helped win the Navy Federal account in 2009 and orchestrated the massive branding transition when the credit union opened its doors to all branches of the military. Her work has earned prestigious industry accolades, including a Bronze Can Cyber Lion and a Midas Award. Outside the boardroom, Pam is a powerhouse endurance athlete currently on a quest to run a marathon in all 50 U.S. states, with nearly 50 marathons already under her belt. Wow, we got to get into that. That's exciting. Well, Pam, thank you so much for coming on and spending a little bit of time with us today. So I know I just powered through a pretty exciting biography, but I'd love to contextualize it for the audience a little bit, especially since we have a fair amount of young people who watch the show and are trying to get into the creative industries and into the advertising world. So would love for you to talk a little bit about your origin story. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you study? And how did you get into agency land and marketing and brand advertising?
Well, Dylan, thank you for that question. I will tell you, for anybody who's trying to get in this business right now, it's an exciting time. There is so many possibilities. I think about when I started this business, and if you said there is, operations roles, there's project management, there's art direction, creative writing, you would have said yes to all of that. I think if you talked about a technologist, people would have thought you were crazy. I think if you thought about the modeling analyst jobs and career fulfillment that we have in marketing, both client side and agency now, it's really grown so much. And all of that, I think, is we're all trying to figure out how do we use data to be smarter and more targeted when we're talking to, in our case, members, which are our customers, or prospects. And so the environment has changed so much that the whole blasting and praying is not really going to be effective. And most of our CMOs have a relationship with our CFOs where we'd have to figure out how to justify that. So it's very strategic. So it's a good time to be in our business because it's changing. It's also in some ways a frustrating time to be in our business because it is changing. So jobs that existed 5 years ago have now morphed. So somebody that used to be a social media strategist is now talking about connection and trying to understand more channels and how they optimize them. And so it does require both left brain and right brain orientation, where I think years ago, if we think about it, it really was people were creative or analytic, and you needed strategy to set the direction and project management to keep you on it. And now it's a very wide set of skills that are needed at the agency side and client side. So that makes it exciting. I think for people that are thinking about this job, the one thing I would encourage you is the healthy sense of curiosity is imperative to thrive in this business. So sometimes it's as simple as thinking about how might we do this differently? How might we approach the problem, not even differently, just as a new problem or a new opportunity? How do we identify a new opportunity? So I think that curiosity is what really makes advertising and marketing a great profession for people. My individual career story is I'm a graduate from Georgia State, and I thought I wanted to be a journalist. And so I actually, 100 years ago when I graduated from college, I interviewed for both on at public relations firms and advertising agencies. And I did what you're not supposed to do, have 2 different resumes, each crafted for each one of those fields, and talked about internships accordingly that were all true, but just pulled out the things that were needed, I thought would be needed in those jobs. And what ended up happening to me This is another thing they tell you, never to confess to somebody that you don't know what you want to do. And I interviewed with a leader from a public relations firm that did a lot with investor relations. I ended up confessing to her that I really was interested in marketing as a whole and didn't really know what I wanted to do. And she was very kind and said, "We don't have a job now, but thank you. And, we'll stay in touch." And a week later, she called me. And at that time, DDB had won the Safeway business. This is a long, long time ago. And she knew they'd be hiring people. So she called me and said, "You seem bright. I know you're looking for your first job. They have a fabulous training program. And a retail piece of business just walked in the door, so they're going to be hiring." So I begged my way in there and then ended up getting hired there and worked there 2 years, actually on the Safeway business.
Wow.
But all of that happened, I think, because I made a connection with somebody, and it wasn't somebody I even knew. I will say I did, through my sorority in college, look up alumni that had jobs in marketing and fired off letters to all of those people. And I got some good informational interviews for those people, just in terms of how I'd present myself and how I'd talk about the job. And then I got hired at DDB, which now I know in the Omnicom merger is gone now from a brand name, but worked there, but really was attracted there because of the training program. And I tell that story too, because I think for people that are looking for their first job, look for what you can learn as high on your priority list, not necessarily what exactly you'll do, because your first job is really about learning, and it's about your learning yourself too. What do you really like doing? What excites you? What can you thrive doing? And think about your career from that whole perspective, and then obviously be running to your next opportunity and not away from, hopefully, the one that you are currently in. Always want to be thinking about what's next.
I love that. It's interesting that you started your career at DDB. I've actually been doing a retrospective because I think a lot of industry veterans who did spend time at DDB were very impacted during the merger when that name kind of went away. Bill Bernbach is kind of a legendary historical figure, maybe not on the level of a David Ogilvy, but pretty close. I'd be curious, was there something different about DDB as you went through the rest of your agency career? And did you also, feel something somewhat personal when they kind of sunsetted that brand?
I did. And I will also tell you, like, our agency, we work with Mullen Lowe out of Boston, and that's another one of those brand names that is being absorbed and going to become TBWA. And for me, it was a little bit of like, we're losing a lot for a business like marketing and advertising, where we are about branding. We're losing a lot of our brands that created other brands across the nation. So, and in the spirit of efficiency, which is important to what we do, it's probably, I have yet to talk to a marketing person who said, "I'm here because it's all about efficiency." I think that's more about a consulting world. So, I think it's definitely a different day. I get the bigger provides more resources and different kinds of opportunities for people, and I do get the value in that. I'm still kind of a little bit, like you said, a little bit sad though about these agencies that had brand names that really made a big difference, and they're no longer, their names are no longer on the door, and they don't have that those agencies no longer exist. But anyway,
yeah, totally.
Well, I will say,
yeah,
it'd be interesting to hear from other people who went through that training. But I think for me, and it was my first job out of school, so I have to admit, besides internships, I didn't really know what to expect at an agency. And I thought they had a really good balance of, like, you bring your brain to work, you bring your whole self to work, be curious, but also confident, but make sure that confidence has a foundation. Like, even if you're wrong, be able to explain how you got there. So being able to explain your logic was beat into me, or emphasized. There was no beating, promise. was part of the orientation from day one. So it wasn't just what you think, but why do you think that way? And I think in a lot of ways that provided a really strong foundation for being more collaborative in approach, because it wasn't early on. I knew it wasn't, people aren't coming to the agency for what I could do as an individual contributor. They were coming to the agency for what we could do.
Yeah,
And
collective.
getting that early on was really imperative. Hopefully I could add to it. And there were some things that you felt proud when you could see your fingerprints on it, but there were other things that you were proud of that your fingerprints didn't show through, but you knew you had a significant role in bringing it to life.
I love that. So you eventually found yourself at Fitzgerald and Company. Was that your first exposure to Navy Federal as a brand?
It was. And I will tell you, Navy Federal Credit Union, Fitzgerald and Company was their very first agency. And they had an in-house group. We still do have an in-house group, very talented group of people. And when they changed their charter to extend membership beyond Navy and Marines, they knew, and I say they because I wasn't client side then, knew that they really needed to think about how could they be a brand that appealed to all branches of service. And it wasn't just, hi, you can't get into the credit union. It was about why. What did we have to say to Army and Air Force and veterans and their families of all these branches of service? So hired Fitzgerald and Company as their first advertising agency to help them set up that brand positioning and establishment. So I was on the agency team at that point. And then really came on, we worked to build the brand, build the personality, build the awareness and preference. And at this point, half of all adults can join. And getting people to stop and think about that is one effort, which is all about eligibility, but it's also about why. I could tell you that you're eligible for numerous groups and you don't care unless it's relevant. So we knew then telling the story about our values as a credit union, as well as the value that we could deliver back to members in terms of savings and earnings, both those stories were important and they were really foundational to setting up the brand positioning. So doing that on the agency side, and then I had a opportunity, and it literally is 9 years, in a couple of days, my anniversary, 9 years that I've been here. I had an opportunity to come here, and we had an in-house ad group, as I said, but marketing was separated in terms of research, corporate communications, et cetera. So the former CEO put that together as a marketing department, and then I came here to build that into an integrated team, and have been here 9 years.
That's amazing.
For those that are thinking about the transition from agency to client, I will say it's been a fabulous role, or is a fabulous role. You get to go deep on one industry versus at the agency. The good news about it is also the challenging news about it. You know a lot about a lot of different industries, and really to be that expert and show up, every day thinking about, in my case, banking and consumer really is on the client side because I don't have other clients. But the thing I was going to share, though, is operations is harder than you think. When I was on the agency side, it was easy to say, oh, they should do this. They should operationalize that. Then coming here, you realize, we have 25,000 employees. We are very much a service brand. Well, when your brand is defined by your service, if those 25,000 people don't understand the brand and the promise, you're never going to fulfill it. And that's harder than most people realize, at least harder than I realized. And, you have to be able to work collaboratively across the enterprise. You have to think about how the implications of any of those changes, and how you really, you said it in the intro, our members of the mission, how do we prove it? How do we show it? And sometimes that's a marketing fulfillment, but often it's not. It's comes from products and services. It comes from a channel. It comes from so really being able to do that full scale is much more a part of the job at the client side, and it's harder than it looks.
I can imagine. Would you unpack that idea a little bit about being a service brand? You know, so much is kind of put in these days to, like, you know, defining your core value, defining your mission, your purpose, why you sit in the world. But for a brand that identifies uniquely as a service brand, it exists literally to serve a constituency or a group of members and people. That's different than a challenger brand aspiring to some mission statement on the wall. So I'd be curious if you could maybe unpack a little bit of the difference of that.
Well, thank you for the question. You know, for us as a credit union, it starts with that as a member-owned, not-for-profit credit union. So those words, there's a lot in there. So that means we answer to the members, and we invest back our profits in things that are important to them, low rates and services, as well as better channels. That's more branches, better digital marketing, et cetera. So as a service brand, and really people define our service as a point of difference. We have checking accounts, we have car loans, we have credit cards, we have full investment services. So we have a full plate of banking services, but what makes us different is how we serve our members. You do have to be, and I purposely use the word member because you have to be a member before you can bank with us. So when people talk about how Navy Federal Credit Union is different as a brand, they talk about when they interacted with a member service rep who showed them empathy. They talk about the service that they got 24/7 by able to reach a stateside real human on the phone in the middle of the night. Sometimes they also talk about the fact that they got a good rate, which is good, and that's part of it. But the real point of difference is how we made them feel, not just what we gave them. So as a service brand, we look at the delivery of that product is about has service all around it. And we do a lot of things operationally to make that happen. I'll give you one short story in that as you are approaching planning and strategic implementation of the plan, you often are thinking about the metrics and the metrics that matter. Well, for us as a service brand, you could say, well, does it matter how fast you can get people off the phone? No, that's an efficiency metric. What does matter is the metric on the member satisfaction. So we will operationalize around member satisfaction versus how fast we can get you off the phone. Now, that said, we also realize our members are not dying to waste their precious time more so doing banking than being with their families and their friends and doing the things they really want to do. So we want to be efficient to them, but as a benefit to them. But the metric that we really operationalize against is satisfaction, not the time on phone. So it does have a lot of implications like that when we're just thinking about the metrics that you measure and how they ladder up as a service brand versus a brand that was all about efficiency.
Yeah, that's great. You know, for a long time, there's been this push and pull between customer service, like you were just mentioning, being a efficiency optimization and a cost center. Essentially something that you want to either offshore, figure out a way to lower your costs, lower how many calls you get by having better FAQs and better digital presence to be able to handle issues and problems or do online banking, et cetera. So essentially trying to either eliminate customer service completely or offshore it to decrease cost. And then you have other brands like maybe the famous example of Zappos, where customer service becomes a marketing channel because you become so good at customer service that you surprise and delight your customers, your members, et cetera. And then that becomes a opportunity to interact with the brand in a human way. And then that becomes word of mouth marketing when you can turn that customer service call into a surprise and delight moment where your member carries on and talks about you. In the world of AI, where customer service is probably one of the easiest things to automate because you get the same questions over and over and over and over. How are you thinking about balancing the idea of AI automation and in customer service, but also the idea that customer service is an important touch point with your consumer from a marketing channel perspective?
We're trying to look at those holistically, and I say that because if you needed basic information, where's the branch nearest me? What's my routing number? I forgot how to order a wire, something that's not personal to you, that very much is just information you need. You probably, as a member interacting with us, you're probably thinking, how fast can I get this answer and move on? So we are using automation to serve up some of those answers because we know that they can be fast, they can be immediate. We are always, and this is unique to us, I think, as a service brand, first of all, we don't do anything offshore. We answer about 1 million calls a week here,
Wow.
all in the United States. We've got some remote call centers. Our largest call center is in Pensacola, Florida, and the next one is in Winchester, Virginia. And then we've got some microsites across the U.S. And that we try to make sure that every product, when we're looking at that, we give the member a path to the human. So if you need a basic information, here's the information. And then if you have a question about that and you go to a human next, that human can already see what you ask about and what information you already had. So you're not having to repeat the situation. You're not having to start all over. And we did that really because that's what members wanted. And that was about the member satisfaction. And so we've been trying to think about how we marry the efficiency with the relationship part of the equation. And often members are looking for advice. They're looking for, how much money can I afford to spend on a car? And we've got a lot of digital tools, and I'll give that as an example. We have a lot of digital tools on the site that you can use to figure that out. And you can do different scenarios relative to the value of the car, how long you want to pay for it, et cetera. But at the end of the day, you're probably thinking you may need to ask the question about turning over or changing the documentation from a car you sold, and you want to talk to a human. We make sure that all of that is very clear. So we are physical and digital, so we'll call it fiscal, because we have the human channel as well as digital, and we try to make sure that they don't compete with each other, but they complement each other. So members can get the answers they need fast from digital and immediate, and they can also get to a human in a pretty efficient way.
I love that. You talked about when you expanded to all branches and families, that expanded your total addressable market to half the population in the U.S. There's always this interesting, there's this kind of catchphrase where, people have said, I know my marketing's working, I just don't know which half of it. You've got this unique situation where 1% of the population serves in the armed forces, but then through that turnover and family history and heritage, you've expanded the aperture to a pretty large portion of the population, considerably half. How do you know that you're talking to the half that is potentially eligible?
We don't always know. We do try to do a lot of our indicators, and we'll try to build some correlations. I'll give you an example there. We are the military appreciation partner for the National Hockey League. And we did that instead of activating with individual teams, which could have been much more market specific. Well, think about our member base. Veterans go everywhere. Yes, they serve. They could serve as little as 4 years, or they could serve 20 years, and anywhere in between, or even up to 30 years. The people that leave with 20 and 30 years actually have a pension and more benefits from their service than those that just served a shorter time period. But when you think about their next job after service, it may not be in a military town. So us being able to talk to everybody in the nation about this, and then we were purposeful on hockey, and then we looked at shared values. We also looked at growth of the sport, both in terms of participation as well as viewership, because that was our big play in terms of people seeing it. And the fact that a lot of the teams already had military appreciation partners and efforts and stuff. And you could look at that and say that's competitive. For us, we looked at it and said, these are our kind of people. They appreciate our
Mm,
and they appreciate the service. So we weren't showing up in hockey games where people were like, why are you here? It was like, of course you're here because we're proud of our veterans and we love to be and partner with other brands like the NHL that support them and recognize their service and thank them for their service. So, does everybody that watch hockey eligible to join? Probably not, but there's more veterans there and active duty than there might be in other sports. So that's how we've kind of weighed things. But there is a little bit of a, there are places that we show up, and I know we end up talking to people that can't join, but we
mm,
try to measure um, website traffic when when the spots air nationally. We look at all of our digital efforts, and we try to look at we'll look at application and pull through rates, thinking how many of those that came who weren't eligible. And our big opportunity, though, is telling people how many are eligible because if you were in the Army and Air Force in active duty 15 years ago, you weren't eligible during your active duty phase. So now to say you're eligible as a veteran, it's almost like we need to get in front of those people. Dylan, you can join, and with them, they'll often bring their family, and the family is a multiplier. We're very much a community brand. We champion community. And that starts with membership because you, as the active duty or veteran, are eligible, as well as your children, your siblings, and your parents. So it's
wow.
the whole community that is eligible for membership. And that's a big part of what makes belonging to the credit union special and truly a common bond.
I love that. There have been some interesting innovations on kind of, you've always throughout the years heard of like, you go up to a counter and they ask you, at the point of sale, like, are you a veteran? We have a veteran discount. Well, there's a company that I can't remember the name of, but they've basically taken that, that retail, asking somebody if they're a veteran or asking for their veteran ID, and they've digitized it and they've created an entire marketplace of opportunities for veterans to get discounts at a whole host of, different companies around the world, around the country and around the world. Has the digitization of that veterans discount idea made it easier for you to target? And are you familiar with that company that I'm thinking of that I can't think of the name of?
Yes, it's made it easier. I will say for us, it's really about starting in as a verification. So it was
Mm.
more for us as a starting point for anti-fraud. You are who you say you are. You
Yeah,
live
like,
where you say you do, and you did serve. And so for us, it was really kind of started there. But veterans are very much a community. I have worked on a series of brands. I talked to you about Navy Federal being a service brand, but I started my career on a retail brand. I worked on packaged goods in New York and in Boston before going back to Atlanta, and then started working there. I worked on another bank, which I won't mention, and then grew to be an account director and had both packaged good clients, service clients, and a utility client, like a very diverse group. And you know the CPG orientation it definitely helps you think about things in terms of selling an individual package.
mm,
The I had never seen it though until I went to focus groups and I'm behind the glass for veterans and saw them talk about their service. And never do people that were drinking the same juice, I worked on Ocean Spray for a while, exchange numbers and go out afterwards. But
oh yeah.
with veterans, you saw that. And it was
Hmm.
so interesting from all the different brands I worked with. It was so different because they may have served in a different branch of service and a different time, but immediately they know that they have those shared values and they respect each other. So, in the example I gave was one of those like, what do you think's the best burger in Dallas? And this one gentleman had a recommendation. He's like, well, I've never heard of that. He's like, well, I don't live near there, blah, blah, describes it. And then they go get a burger together. And it's like, I trust you. I can trust you because I know your service. I respect your service. So you must also have good credentials in terms of being able to talk about a burger recommendation. So veterans are definitely a community, unlike other target audiences, at least from my experience on the brands I've seen.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that story. Yeah, it's almost like you talked about being in the Greek Greek life in college. Like I, had that same experience where if I meet a Sigma Chi in the world somewhere, especially in the industry, or if a young one reaches out to me for advice, or if I reach out to somebody who's older than me, and I identify with that, chances are I'm gonna at least get an opportunity to, say hello. It's like that common shared experience, or, obviously military service is much more impactful, much longer. There's the danger involved, but yeah, it kind of creates that common layer of like, okay, we have a common experience, a common way that we view the world, and there's almost an instant trust factor to some
Right.
degree. Do you think that trust factor amongst the service branches? Do you think that also transfers to brands who are trying to serve that population? Like, is there a trust factor that is deeper? Like, I don't consider my trust factor with my current bank other than the fact that like they have great technology. Here's another question. So there was a in the bank in 2008, when the banks all caused us a lot of trouble, there was this movement of people that wanted to go to credit unions. I got caught up in that because I was like, yeah, screw the big banks, let's go to credit unions. And then I joined a local credit union in my town in Burbank that was the Hollywood credit union or something like that, and they had great rates, they had great customer service, they had good branches in Southern California, but their online banking was atrocious. Like, all of the digital aspects just couldn't hold a candle to the big banks on how easy their technology works and how seamless the experiences of ATMs, branches, and technology. Has the technology caught up? Like, does every credit union, every bank essentially have state of the art online banking applications now? Is that just not something that consumers should worry about in 2026?
Well, I definitely can't speak to every bank and every credit union. That said, I do think, just like I talked about, our field of membership is everywhere in the United States. When you think about um, the small example you gave where they might have had a regional, everybody was
Hmm.
together, so it probably made digital less imperative. Where when you serve a national footprint, digital, we have digital's our number one channel. Um,
Wow.
and our app is very highly rated by our members that use it. We have a good satisfaction score with our members that use our online banking and our digital app. So we never look at it as optional. It's like you have to have both. And then
Mm.
when you need something where you really want to sit down and have a conversation with somebody across a desk, you need the branches. So we have 383 branches across the United States. And 178 of those branches are either on a base or literally across the street, like right there. So we're really
Mm.
close to the people that we serve. But to your point, digital often is the easiest, fastest way to get the answers and the access to your specific account and what's happening. So we also have invested in those digital channels. And I feel like I said, I can't speak for all, but most of the credit unions do have a solid digital experience. And we've looked at things as that omni-channel approach, like how can we show up with the channels that you need and want based on what's happening. And sometimes that is going to be a person and going to a branch or calling someone, but other times it's going to be digital. So I think credit unions have definitely made up a lot of lost ground there. And I think a lot of that has been around how they can serve their members because their members are everywhere. I love the example you gave with Zappos because we see that people bring to banking these same expectations they have with other service providers. You like Zappos because it was easy to return a pair of shoes you decided you didn't like, or some other equation. It's not that they had the most shoes known to mankind. And but because of how they set the expectations on what you really defined as good customer service. And so we're trying to not only look at what members hear from other banks, but what they hear from other service providers. And how did we earn? I love the fact that you use the word trust, because we look at trust as it's earned, not given. And it's earned by the drops. It's earned by every little thing we do that helps you along your fiscal fiscal journey, becoming financially stronger, using financial education resources so that you can make the right decisions. So we look at that as holistically, and we talk about member education, we talk about member engagement, as well as member acquisition. How can we make sure more members know they can join, and that we've got all the same digital tools that they need and want.
Love it. I wanted to ask you about your career as an endurance athlete. Running a marathon is no easy task. You've completed over 50 marathons already, and you have this goal of completing one in every U.S. state. There's this idea right now in kind of startup culture and in business, this idea of like doing hard things. But I think there is like a unique perspective that comes with training for ultra marathon sports. And I'm curious, the mindset that you have to put your body into, your brain, that mentality of pushing yourself to kind of the edge of human physical condition, and the idea of doing hard things. How did that show up in your career as well? How did you translate the skills you learned from being out there, on these races into your career?
In short, it's cheap therapy. So I'll start. I also will say, my husband and I achieved this goal together. We finished our 50 states in Jackson.
Wow, that's so cool.
So we now have
Congratulations.
a marathon in every state. I'm flattered that you called me an ultra athlete, because for me, it was never about being an athlete. It definitely wasn't about being an ultra. For me, though, let's face it, marketing is always on. And it feels like you can get easily burnt out. And for me, running distance got to be, you have to have a plan. You have to have the discipline, commitment to it. It's easy to do, though, traveling. If you can take a pair of shoes, you can go. You don't have to have a pool. You don't have to have a tennis partner. You don't have to have a bike. You don't have to have, So it became really easy for me to do. And to that point, it is, when I talk about cheap therapy, it's hard to do it. And sometimes you're like, I'd love to just sleep in. For me, always having a schedule, like I would train 26 weeks out for the marathon. So starting and building up, and I'd post it and put it on my laptop. Also print it out and hang it in my bathroom at home, and like, where are you and where should you be? And are you running the distance you need to be? And early on, I did the miles because I was afraid if I didn't, I wouldn't complete it. And then it became a goal of like, well, can I qualify for Boston? And can I, and then my husband's the one that threw out the idea of a marathon in every state. I'm kind of like, he's crazy, but sure, because we'll see some interesting places in the United States, which we did.
Wow.
And I will tell you, finishing at Jackson Hole was fabulous. And to feel like we really did it, it did feel like, but in the journey, I had lots of time to think, pray, cry, scream, anything, because distance running, you have time out there to think and clear your head. So that's why I go back to cheap therapy. But it was, I'm really excited about doing it. And like I said, we saw some great places. I had never been to South Dakota. The Badlands are beautiful. I had never been to Indianapolis, believe it or not, which is a great town. So there were some happy surprises. Then there were other places, which I won't mention, that you go and you happen to run 4 hours in the pouring rain, and you leave going, I hate that city. It's like, well, it doesn't rain there every day.
Yeah. You just got it at the wrong moment. Yeah, I used to, when I when I was trying to move back to San Diego, I spent a year and a half in the Oceanside RV park. And in addition to a lot of veteran families that were living in that RV park, there every once in a while, all the ultra marathon guys would, pour into the RV park in their, big rig, these beautiful rolling, command centers that they would have to show up for, a race in San Diego or one of the San Diego area races. But yeah, it was, I've always been in awe of people who are able to complete that. So I was curious.
Well,
Thank you for sharing.
well, also for those listening, I have to say I did my very first marathon for my 40th birthday.
Wow. So you started
And
late in
I
life
started
too.
late. I was
Holy
a runner,
cow.
but I had never done distance. And I was like, I'm going to do a marathon because I'm turning 40. Check. And then now I've done 63 of them. So
So wild.
I just share that in that it's never too late. So if you have something on your list that is you want to try it, jump in, try it, and
I love that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about data-driven insight. So, you've often said your sweet spot is finding the nuggets of data that turn into insights that can then turn into opportunities. AI is giving us massive new capabilities and hoovering up data from many different sources in real time. I'm wondering if you could share a data point that turned into a creative idea. And do you feel like the age of AI is increasing our capability to leverage data for creative insights, or is it creating too much noise?
see all of the above. And I say see all of the above because there's times when it may create noise, but we don't know that it's noise. And
Mm,
how do we? And one of the things we're really trying at Navy Federal is looking at what is actionable, because there are things that I may learn that aren't really actionable. There are things that you may learn that truthfully aren't relevant to the particular situation or the decision. And with our member base, I think I mentioned there's 15 million of them, and they're active duty, they're veterans, they're immediate family members, they're Department of Defense contractors and employees. So think about the need set of those. So a data insight has to be relevant to who you are and where you're at. So when I go through those different audiences that we talk about, for example, we do a very supportive program for military. They're going through a PCSing, which is a permanent change of station, also known as a move. Well, if you're active duty, you really care about that. If you're a veteran, you may like that we do it, but it's not relevant to you. If
mm,
you're a DoD contractor, you don't care. I don't mean that they don't care, but you know what I mean? So
yeah,
for us, it's really about what truly is an insight and what is relevant to you and meaningful to you. And I think for us, I'll give you kind of an embarrassing one. During COVID, we had decided to send everybody a birthday message. I didn't have a pause, which I should have. This is a story I'm going to tell about sending everybody a birthday message. And truthfully, we got some fabulous, usually an email back that was from somebody saying, thank you. COVID's been hard. We've been lonely. We haven't heard from our friends as much. So thank you for the birthday message. It was very meaningful. A very small group of people sent notes saying, this is too close. This was too close. Here's a
mm,
personal bit of my information to send this to me, and not so cool. So those that we had gotten letters from, we went back into our database, and interesting enough, they all belong to a certain segment. We've done a segmentation of our member base that helps us get to better personalization on the communications, and they were very high on their privacy concerns. So if I had taken a pause versus it being like, okay, a birthday, you get older or you die. So it's good getting older. It means you're not dying. So bring on the birthday wishes. But if I had stopped to filter that through the member lens, I would have made a different decision. And
interesting.
I think for all of us, to your point, it is coming back to AI helps us get to data and helps us wrangle data faster. We just need to make sure that we're verifying the data that we have and making sure that it aligns with what we already know about that member and that it's helpful. and it's not something that may either just be irrelevant or not really constructive. So I think we're all still on a journey on what matters and how we can be better, smarter, faster, which are definitely AI enables all three of those: better, faster, smarter. But the relevance is really, really important, and we cannot we can make sure that we do not replace the human's judgment on how do we apply what's relevant and meaningful versus turning over a lot of those functions to AI. So that's why at Navy Federal, we're committed to always keeping a human in the loop, because we need that human intelligence to think about what's future forward and what's helpful.
Very smart. Now that you've sat in the CMO seat for 9 years, after working at these amazing agencies like BBDO, DDB, and Fitzgerald and Company, in a world of consolidation, disruption, agencies that were acquired by these holding companies being spit back out to their original owners and restructuring, and the barrier to entry of launching an agency becoming, probably lower and lower with all the tools out there. There's a lot of flattening of the world. What's the number one thing that agencies get wrong when they pitch, when they're in a pitch, and what's the best way to sustain an agency relationship with a brand?
Well, I think the second question is easier to answer than the first one. I think the second
Sure.
question is on sustaining it. It's not dissimilar to any other relationship. You invest in the relationship. You spend time together. You help them learn as much about you and the brand as you can, and then let them get out of their way. Let them do what they do well, which is really good creative thinking, good strategic guidance. Your job as a client is kind of enabling that. I've told my agency partners, in some ways you're the best part of my day, and I want to be the best part of your day. It doesn't mean we're not going to have challenging conversations, but all of those conversations are much more conducive to building a healthy relationship than if we don't talk about it and we just, dance around issues and keep going, talk about starting or stopping programs without the rationale. So investing in each other and making sure that each are set up for success. When we do something in-house, I make sure we share it with the agency because I want them to know how they can build on it, not compete with it, but build on it. When the agency does something, we make sure we share it in-house with how do we build on that and complement it and pull it all the way through to branches and pull it through to our website, pull it through to our social media, pull it through to our influencers. And so we try to make that where it's not a competitive situation. It's all about integration and everybody bringing their subject matter expert to this integrated team effort. So I think that's really crucial to a good, healthy relationship. And it's really about sharing the good and the bad, when it's working and when it's not, and having those candid conversations. I don't know that I have anything that agencies do, to your point about the one thing they do wrong. I love it when they're curious, but they come informed. They've already thought about something, but they're asking the right questions to us. Nothing frustrates me more with a vendor who, and I say vendor in this case, not an agency, but a vendor who calls me and says, I would love to get you on the phone and talk about your goals. Why am I going to spend time with you telling you about my goals? You're not telling me how you can help me. So don't make that call. Those I delete right away because I just think I'm not going to just sit. And by the way, do some research, figure out who we are, figure out what's important to us. So
yeah, especially when it's so easy now.
Yeah, don't make those blind calls. Also, the other thing that occasionally happens is my own phone will ring at 5 o'clock on Friday and I'll answer it and then come to find out it's a salesperson. I'm like, I'm not buying anything at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and I'm not buying anything by myself. Make this real. It doesn't behoove you that way, nor me. I'm not susceptible to the call, and I'm not thinking highly constructive thoughts about your approach when you do that either. So maybe you accomplished it because you got me to answer the phone, but
Yeah, I think we've talked a little bit about the biz dev approach, and what is just because you're successful in making the connection point doesn't mean that's a good experience with your brand, right? Yeah, it's interesting. All right, I know we talked a little bit about this on the pre-show, so I feel like I have to get it out. There's been this explosion in military podcasts, especially in the special operators community, Navy SEALs like Jocko Willink or Sean Ryan, or guys like Jack Carr who are creating, shows like Meat Eater on Netflix and amazing TV shows on Amazon. Like, I'm forgetting the name of it, but there's, just like, I think a real obsession with military lifestyle from people who just see that probably have an affinity to some of the things that you were talking about: brotherhood, connection, trust, shared experience, life of service, doing something hard, doing something dangerous, doing something that you can feel proud of. Like, these are all aspirational things. And when we look at especially the special operators, Navy SEALs, Rangers, Green Berets, we have even maybe fighter pilots should be included in that class. We have this, just admiration for their skill sets and what they've been able to do and the things that they've seen. Why do you think these podcasts have exploded on the scene and engulfed not just a veteran audience, but a audience of people who just want to follow it because they're really interested in those stories? And is that something that you guys have been able to tap into, the military influencer, so to speak?
Yes. And I will say, I think, and I haven't done the math to prove this, but I think there is a abundance of those, that genre, if you will, speaking to that lifestyle, hobbies, habits, etc., of veterans, because they share such a common bond. I think we've seen so many of them because we live in a creator economy. When I think about AI, it's so much easier now. Like, when you think about a podcast, creating a podcast 10 years ago required going to a studio. Now, if you have a phone and a mic, and you may have to have a headset, but maybe not, you're good to go. So this creator economy has created where a lot of those opportunities, and I think veterans and the examples you've used, they all have fabulous stories, and they're great storytellers, and they're interesting. And for those that share the values, and they admire them and they want to hear those stories. So I think that's why those have become so popular. And let's face it, when you're facing an ugly commute, you're in the car and just like this, it's good to hear that somebody else fought through something else that was hard. And I think it all tells us that we can lean forward into those things that are hard. And you see that this person was a survivor and they're a thriver in doing hard things. So I think we admire them, and they have a sense of adventure that, as a listener, you may or may not have that same sense of adventure, but you admire theirs, and it's entertaining to listen to. So I think that's
it's like I think it's the male version of how a lot of this is a generalization, of course, but true crime is really popular with female demographics. Well, these military podcasts are very popular with male demographics. Probably not uniquely on either side, but obviously there's a skew.
But I will close with telling you a story about our influencers. When we started using influencers, we were very nervous because, for us, speaking on behalf of our brand, we wanted it to remain authentic. So we started with military spouses because they're the ones that are often running the budget, keeping the household together, and a smaller community, but a lot of credibility with each other for some of those same attributes. Here's somebody who already went through a PCSing with their partner and their marriage is still alive. I want to hear how they did it. Here's somebody that moved multiple times and they figured out how to really thrive with their family on a budget. I want to hear from them. So high credibility, smaller audiences, but really authentic and very credible. So we started there. And then we have added veterans to our influencer base in the last couple of years and amplify those because they can speak to some of those specific product experiences. Like think about a VA mortgage. Well, if you're not a veteran, you can't get one of those. So we
Yeah,
should
that
talk about
authenticity
a
piece.
veteran. So we've tried to make sure we kept that same authenticity while we scale the reach. In closing, though, I have to tell you, I have this great quote. I think it's a great quote, and it's pinned to my monitor. I don't know if you can see it there.
Yeah.
But it probably shows backwards. But I said, it's the fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. And it's a quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I think for everybody in marketing, I have it up because fight for the things you care about says you have to focus. You've got to focus on the things you really can impact and the things that have the biggest impact back to what you're doing. So focus. And but doing it in a way that will lead others to join you also acknowledges you're not in this battle or this journey alone. But as a true leader, you need to figure out a way to do it in a way that encourages and brings other people along, because you're going to need that entire village and that entire team to make things happen. So hopefully that's meaningful to someone else. And I keep it up to remind myself, fight, which means focus. It's not going to be easy. You got to work hard, but do it in a way that is going to motivate others.
I love it. Well, if Pam, if folks want to follow along with your thinking, or if something resonated on our conversation, or if there's someone who wants to check out Navy Federal and potentially, now that they know that they're eligible, maybe take a look at the product set, get in touch with somebody, where would you like to send the audience?
Two places, one of which is our website, and you can sign up for membership there and start getting all the benefits and make sure that you can join. And then for me personally, if there's anything you heard, I'm on LinkedIn and you can follow me there, just Pam Piligian. And thank you for the time.
Amazing. Well, thank you, everybody. And if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a follow or a subscribe. That's how we find a larger audience organically. If you're listening to the show, an honest review on whatever platform you might be listening is how we find a larger audience on the audio side. And if there's a veteran out there somewhere, or maybe somebody in agency land who wants to understand what makes a great client agency relationship, or maybe a brand marketer who you think would benefit from the discussion that I had with Pam today, don't forget to share the show. And with that, I will wish you a great day. Thanks again, Pam. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.